Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Justice for All podcast. I am Dreadwind, aka Glenn, with here my colleague
Amy Walker.
There we go. I'm not going to introduce you.
I thought you were then. I was like, what's happened? He suddenly cut off.
No. Introduce your damn self. I'm not doing it for you.
Oh, I see how this relationship's going to carry on. Fine.
Equal rights for all is what it is. There you go. Yes, I'm here with Amy to talk about some more DC comic stuff because a few people have commented on the fact that they liked the first episode, so I'm glad you did. And we shall be continuing with more stuff. Usually every sort of couple of weeks or so we'll alternate between this and the Nerva Beacon. So there'll always be something midweek coming out, and obviously main podcasts during the weekends as well. I will get more on schedule with that. It's been a crazy few weeks, that's all, so I do apologise. But Amy, first off, how have you been? How are you today?
Yeah, been pretty good. Could do without the bad weather, 2 days in a row, had plans to go out for nice evening walks, and then it hasn't stopped raining, so yeah, that's a bit of an annoyance, but other than that, not too bad.
Excellent stuff. Because you haven't asked me.
Oh my God, I was just about...
No, it's not working out. So this is the end of it, lads. Just pack it up, take it back, shut it down. No, I've had a stinking cold this week, so I've not been very well, but battling through it and hopped up on a lot of day nurse. It's quite good stuff, actually, day nurse. Not as good as the American stuff. That's amazing. And British Night Nurse can suck it because it's rubbish. It's like you drink American NyQuil, which is the American version of it, and you're gone because it's got antihistamines in it, so it just knocks you out. British version, it's got a little bit of alcohol in it, so it sends you a bit to sleep, and that's no rubbish. But anyway, that's enough of my illness. You're here to hear about some DC comic stuff, and as Dave mentioned, we're starting off with the most accessible and easy thing.
Yeah,
Crisis on Infinite Earths. Because why not?
Well, go big or go home, I guess.
Exactly, ride or die, innit? Let's start off with potentially the most important event in DC Comics history ever. I don't think that's overstating it.
No, I'd probably go on to include possibly one of the most important events in comics ever, because it's really the first big event, and Marvel churn out a big event every year now, so they copied the formula. I think
the
thing that started it
for a while. Yeah, they haven't been doing it that much as of late, though, have they?
No, it kind of trailed off. They do the mini crossovers, like the 2 or 3 titles that intertwine, but nothing really this big since, I think, Final Crisis.
Yeah, I would probably say Final Crisis.
Or, I suppose if you would count it, Blackest Night.
Yeah, I would probably count Blackest Night.
I always think of that as a Crisis book, even though it's not got Crisis in the title.
It's Green Lantern Crisis, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, well, it affected the whole universe, so...
Yep. And it turns out it was Necron all along anyway.
Yep.
But there you go. Spoilers for the 10-year-old book. Basically, I mean, it came about because of necessity. That's the best thing about it, I think. It was necessary because the DC universe had just become so bloated by 1985 that DC just sort of had to trim it down. You have 52, or they used the 52 universes concept. I don't think it was quite that they had, but they thought that 52 was a good number. And basically, it was just bloated beyond belief. There were sort of 82 different kinds of bloody kryptonite. I'm joking, obviously. There wasn't that many, but it wasn't far off. And there were just so many characters that had been introduced over the years that basically just didn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah, and then you had alternate versions of the same characters, so it's, which Batman is this, which Superman is this, and it was a bit much.
Yeah, and obviously I think the Flash is probably one of the most famous iterations of a character that had multiple versions, even multiple people. Obviously, you had Jay Garrick in the Golden Age universe, and obviously Barry Allen in the rest of them. And again, Superman was another character that had many, many different versions, and it was just wasn't reader friendly at the end of the day. It was getting to the point where it was almost impossible for a new reader to pick up on what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the people who noticed this, well, the two main people who noticed this was Marv Wolfman, who had been working on things like Green Lantern. He'd redone Teen Titans as well, and did a lot of things. He got a letter from a fan in 1981 asking why a character did not recognise Green Lantern in a recent issue, despite the two having worked together in an issue 3 years earlier. And then soon after that, Wolfman pitched Crisis on Infinite Earths as the history of the DC universe. And basically seeing it as a way to simplify, trim down a bit, make it more streamlined and attract new readers. And that's was his basic idea. The other person who was heavily involved in it was George Perez, who in 1984 came into the DC Comics universe because he was working on Marvel for a long time. But the company's comic book sales in general when he came there were still below Marvel's.
Mm.
And he basically said this is because of the DC multiverse. It's too difficult for a new reader to pick up a book and just say, I can read from here.
Yeah.
Whereas with Marvel, that's always generally been the case. They have, they do have different universes. It's not such a thing in Marvel. It never has been.
Yeah, it's mainly 616 with the odd story that's very clearly a different universe, like, is it 1602?
1602, you got Marvel Zombies.
Yeah, stuff where it's like, it's very obviously so different. It's like the closest universe they get is, the Ultimate Universe, which whilst it's like the most prevalent alternate Marvel universe, you still would struggle to get that confused with the 616 because it's so different in tone and characterization. But DC, it's so easy to do with some of those older books.
Oh, absolutely. Especially things like Superman, the Superman books, and then Batman especially. Wonder Woman, not so much, because Wonder Woman at that point wasn't really a thing. That was Perez's big thing, was that he got to work on Wonder Woman. That's basically why he came to DC. Because she'd not been a relevant character for quite a while by this point. She'd sort of been a secret agent, and lost her powers, and then didn't use her powers, and then they treated Wonder Woman really badly.
that happened for a while.
In the 70s. She could just completely sucked. But Perez, I say that was one of his big things. It came to a point where a Comics Alliance journalist, Chris Sims, who says that the multiverse, it felt old-fashioned, conjuring up images of imaginary stories and characters that DC acquired when they bought out Golden Age competitors, that kind of thing, shuffled off to their own universes. Marvel, on the other hand, felt contemporary. When you stack them up against the other, there's one difference that sticks out above anything else. Marvel feels unified. And absolutely, it was disparate. So like I say, Wolfman got the edict to do it and streamline it. They did change the title from the History of the DC Universe to Crisis of Infinite Earths because its premise involving the destruction of entire worlds sounded more like a crisis. There you go.
Yeah, that kind of fits the bill.
That's the reason. But Wolfman said he did realise when he pitched the series to DC, he did realise it was going to be a completely new beginning for the DCU. He said, I knew up front that they did too how big this was going to be, but no one knew how well it would sell or whether it would sell at all. It was a risk DC was willing to take, something which doesn't happen often now, risk-taking. He said, because my thoughts were that DC needed a lot of help at the time, and they did too. Yes. Maybe they can get him in to do the DCEU, because that kind of needs sorting out at the moment.
Yeah.
I still don't think Cavill's gone. I don't think he's gone. We'd know by now.
Oh,
just sort it out.
Yeah.
And I know Affleck, pretty certain Affleck's going, right? I would say. Maybe they should take this as an opportunity to ditch Jared Leto and just have.
Well, have they? Because there's the new Joker film coming out.
It's apparently it's not connected. Apparently, it's like an Elseworlds.
Okay, but they still haven't really established their own universe yet, and now they're doing alternate ones. Okay.
I'd just have Phoenix do it. because his pictures already look more like the Joker than Jared Leto ever did. But there you go. We'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, it's just wait and see. And
they can't scrap it because that means scrapping Wonder Woman, and I can't see him. I can't see him ending Gal Gadot's run as Wonder Woman.
No, she did too well with that film for them to.
Well, all of
get
them.
Rid of her.
Even in the films that people thought, I like all of them. Just saying that now, but some people didn't like them, but they still said that she was the best thing in them.
Yeah,
so.
Even if they turned around and said nothing's really working or clicking, we're getting rid of everything, but we're keeping Wonder Woman. It wouldn't surprise me if they kept at least her franchise going. But they've still got Aquaman and Shazam coming out to see how they go as well. So it might start to sort of cohese together a bit more and work for them.
Build it around Shazam.
Yeah.
Basically. Or should I say Captain Marvel?
Yes.
Yes. I realised. Brie Larson looks great. Yes. It looks like the Green Lantern film we should have had. But at the end of the day, she's not Captain Marvel. She's not my Captain Marvel. I'm going to get in trouble for that.
They're both Captain Marvel for me, but if you said Captain Marvel, the first hero that comes into my head would be Billy Batson.
Yeah.
And Shazam, because I remember reading the JSA run by Johns and him being in that, and that being my intro to that character really, and him being amazing. So for me, that's my first thought when you say Captain Marvel. And even though they've renamed him Shazam, I still in my head I was like, no, it's Captain Marvel. And not to take anything away from Carol, because she's amazing as well.
Absolutely, and Brie Larson looks great. We'll talk about that another time. Meanwhile, so a list was made of the characters that were part of the DCEU, and then characters from other universes, such as those that belong to Charlton Comics, so like The Question and characters like that. They were also used as well. Mm-hmm. One of the purposes of the comic was to showcase all the characters that DC had. So basically saying, look at all these. And then it killed most of them. So hundreds of characters died. Among the most noted was Barry Allen. Spoiler. Marv Wolfman has actually gone on record as saying he didn't want to kill him, but DC ordered him because they perceived the character as being dull.
I can see why, in the sense of he wasn't being utilised well at that time.
Yeah, he's a very conservative character, the original Flash in the old DCU. It even says that in Wolfman's novelisation, which is turned into graphic audio, which I can heartily recommend. It's a very good way of listening to it. He says that I'm a very conservative guy, which is not something, it's not a value I would put on the Flash, personally. I always think the Flash is quite a liberal guy, but maybe that's Wally West more than Barry Allen, but never mind. But yeah, he didn't want to kill him, but DC said you've got to, and Wolfman wanted to make the series unforgettable, because lots of writers apparently expressed interest in simplifying the universe because it's a ball ache to write, basically, something like that. Perez wasn't the intended artist, but was excited when he learned about it. He saw it as an opportunity for revenge against Marvel, which he blamed for blocking the JLA Avengers crossover he'd been working on. But yes, the idea for it was first noted in the December 1981 issue of the Comics Journal, which mentioned a 12-part series scheduled for 1982. It actually came out in 1985, I believe, eventually, because that's the way these things work. It was April 85 to March 86, 12-issue miniseries. It was published in hardcover as well. So that was in December 1998. So it is out there. And then a trade paperback in 2001 with cover art by George Perez and Alex Ross, because of course. So, a brief synopsis. Very brief synopsis. So, the conflicting stories of the DCEU are explained as a multiverse containing many parallel universes and alternate versions of the characters, with primary DC continuity related to as Earth-1. A cosmic being from the beginning of time known as the Monitor catalogues all of those, but he has an evil counterpart that's popped up called the Anti-Monitor, who comes from an antimatter universe. And when there's an accident with antimatter in one universe, the Anti-Monitor begins destroying many of the realities with a wave of antimatter, planning on becoming sole ruler of all realities under his yoke. So the Monitor recruits heroes from across time and space to set up 5 towers to help merge the multiverse back into one to make it stronger and therefore less susceptible to attack. However, his protege Harbinger, who he has known since her birth, he's murdered by her because she's possessed by one of the Anti-Monitor's demons. His death, however, releases enough energy to project the last 5 powerful Earths into a protective limbo, because he knows this is going to happen. The Anti-Monitor recruits one of my favourite characters, Psycho Pirate, to his course, infusing him with part of his power to manipulate the heroes of Earth 4, Earth S and Earth X against the rest. But the Monitor has utilised Alexander Luthor Jr., who's from Earth 3, to open a portal between the Limbo and Antimatter universes. Meanwhile, a being called Pariah tracks down the Anti-Monitor at his fortress, and the heroes destroy a converter powered by Stellar Energy to destroy the last 5 Earths. The injured Anti-Monitor retreats, and Supergirl dies. So, I'm not going to tell you everything. Read it for yourselves. Amy, when did you first become aware of Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Not long after I started getting into comics.
5 seconds after your birth, wasn't it?
No, I was in my 20s when I really got into comics properly, and DC especially. And my local comic book shop, I was going in there and becoming more of a regular, and became friends with the guy who ran it. And he turned around and was like, look, you dig in your DC. If you want to, learn a bit of the history, get a handle on the universe, this is where you want to go. It's a big read, but it will set up most things for you. So I took the punt because it was a big hefty book and a little pricey, but I thought, I'll go for it. And I think it was like the 3rd or 4th graphic novel I picked up, so I did it fairly early on.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes that's best, though, isn't it?
Yeah, get the hard stuff out of the way.
Yeah, that's why we're doing it so early on, because I would say to any listener who is listening to this who hasn't read it, read it. And if you've not listened to the graphic audio, get the graphic audio, because it is, again, it's very accessible. And it's written by Marv Wolfman. It's based on his novel. So, again, it's coming from source. It's not somebody else who said, oh, I know I can do this, interpret this differently. So, but yeah, it's a big read. It's like, if another way to get into it, I would say, was probably go Sinestro, Corwall, and Blackest Night. But, it's a big old thing. This is just as big. This is not as big, but maybe. But there's a lot of characters. You'll meet all the characters that, you're likely to meet in the DC universe. Apart from one major player, because Batman hardly features in it. Yeah,
he's in it for a very small amount, which nowadays would be a almost crazy move, but I think they looked at the story they wanted to tell, and they were honest and were like, okay, this is beyond Batman. What?
It's too cosmic.
Yeah, he's not bringing anything to the table, and they didn't try and have Batman having the secret knowledge and the plans in place, or gaining godlike powers, or having some gadget. They're just like, no, he's a dude. This is beyond dude level. You kind of got to go to the big characters like Supes.
No, I agree. I think one of the other reasons is that they were sort of talking to Frank Miller by this point as well. I think they had plans for Batman.
Yeah.
As in year one and things like that, and stripping it back a bit. But yeah, absolutely, you're completely right. I mean, there's nothing he could bring to the table on this one. This is too cosmic for him.
Yeah, it's because even characters like Blue Beetle, who's in it quite a bit, and is recruited by Harbinger, the Anti-Monitor. No, sorry, the Monitor. He mentions a couple of times in his internal dialogue, it's like, I'm just a dude. This is a bit... He's got those doubts, and when he's there with Superman, with the Lanterns, Arion from Atlantis is like, these are guys who are heavy hitters, and he acknowledges he doesn't bring much to the table, and Batman would have been much the same, but I don't think you can put Batman in that position where he has to admit he's useless.
Oh no, you definitely can't do that, because he's not a useless character, and most of the characters in the DC universe have massive respect for Batman. But sometimes you need to use the Spectre.
Yeah. Well, when you bring in the Spectre in as your big gun, you know it's serious.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, God's literal wrath.
Yeah.
I love the Spectre. Yeah, when you've got to bring that guy in, and when you've got to bring Darkseid in, because Darkseid comes into it at the end as well.
Mm.
And the new gods, when you've got to bring literal gods into it, then, yeah, Batman's not going to really do much. Excuse me. It's not like that, the final episode of Justice League, where at the end of the day, Darkseid is distracted by Batman, but he isn't beaten by Batman, even though Batman would go to his grave trying to beat him. Mm. You need Superman punching things. And in fact, you need two Supermen.
Yeah, I was going to say you need two.
Because you've got Earth 1 and Earth 2, and you've got Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 and Superboy of Earth Prime, who would come back and cause loads of trouble later on. Yeah, the Anti-Monitor is kind of powerful.
Yeah, well, they midway through the book, they kind of up the ante and show that by, like you mentioned in the synopsis, they kill off Supergirl, who is as strong as Superman. I don't think they've done the whole thing at that point where they implied that she's stronger yet, that version of her, but she was at least on his level. It's like, if you're killing off a Superman level character, it's bad. You know, the heroes have got it tough.
Relatively easily as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
It wasn't like a drag out fight like Superman and Doomsday. It was just, okay, now she's dead.
And he's injured as well. That's the other thing you need to remember. To be fair, a lot of those injuries she creates, but still. And like I say, we're not denigrating Supergirl and saying Supergirl's a win, because she certainly isn't. We're just saying that's how powerful the Anti-Monitor is. Sometimes
you've got to make your powerhouses look weak in comparison, just to show how powerful the bad guy is. And Anti-Monitor's that level. He's one of the most powerful villains in comics, not just in DC, but in comics, full stop.
Until the Sinestro Corps War on Blackest Night happens, obviously.
Yeah.
It's turned into a bit of a bitch, but, you know, never mind. But at that point, he is super big bad, biggest of all the bads. Mm. And it turns out, the hand at the start of the universe. Which I kind of love. I love the fact that he ends up being the hand. And it's
although isn't that retconned now?
It is retconned now, which is sad, but at that point...
Who is it now? Isn't it? Is it Volthoom, the First Lantern now?
Yeah, I think it's the First Lantern.
Mm. Which I don't mind.
It used to
ties into Lantern mythology. But...
Absolutely. But at that point, it was Anti-Monitor. It was... I'm trying to think of a good... Oh, it's Horus's vision. Horus's vision, which sets him off of the Horus heresy in 40k. It's like, it's self-fulfilling, because the vision he sees of the Emperor worshipped as a god and the universe in crisis. I want to avert that. No, mate, you're going to cause it. Mm. And it's basically Anti-Monitor, haha, I'm going to be that hand, I'm going to make that hand. It's like, oh shit, hang on a minute, it's me. Even though it's him being pulled out by the Spectre, which I kind of like. The Spectre's a dick.
Yeah, one guy you wouldn't want to fuck with.
No, it's got. I don't know if you've ever read any of the Spectre comics, but in the 90s, especially the 80s and the 90s, they went full. It's something I love. It's an ironic death. So anything like sort of Final Destination, that kind of thing, I love those films. But I love it even more when it's an ironic death. So there's an old Vincent Price film called Theatre of Blood, and people in it. He's a wronged actor. And he kills off people who've wronged him, like critics and actors who've taken his roles, and they all get ironic Shakespearean deaths. So, and that's what the Spectre was going around doing. So, like, drug dealer would end up getting sort of filled with like 1 million bloody heroin needles and things like that.
Yeah, like the one I know about, I think because it was fairly recent, was the original Dr. Light, the guy, because the Spectre turned him into a living candle. Yes. Who melted to death, and it was like that. Yeah. That was horrific.
It's like the pillar assault stuff.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, the guy deserved it, but it was horrific.
Oh yeah, but yeah, it was worse than that in the 90s. You can imagine. But yeah, the Spectre's like sort of ultra level, and there's been quite a few characters in the DC universe, but at this point he was just the Spectre. And it ties, like you say, it ties into Lantern mythology because it's all to do with Oa, and it's preventing renegade scientist Krona from creating technology necessary for Anti-Monitor's plan to succeed. And, you know, it's all to do with the antimatter universe, where obviously Sinestro ends up going.
Yeah, the Cordians and, you know, the tech to make the Yellow Lanterns and everything that spins out of that. It's, yeah, so much of this ties into later stuff. And
oh, absolutely.
It's stuff that clearly wasn't planned at the time, but they use this book so well in future things, just like little bits they seeded throughout there. It just works perfectly to create this cohesive universe.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the old Transformers comics, the Marvel UK ones, where Simon Furman wasn't able to sort of tap into the US continuity because the UK comic was a weekly comic and the American comic was a monthly comic. So obviously, we ate up their material really quickly. So he had to find a way to get material into the UK comics. Well, obviously, that's going to be difficult because you don't know what the Americans are going to be doing. So you don't want to use any of their characters. Luckily, at that point, Transformers the movie had come out. So he knew that America wasn't going to use, Marvel in America wasn't going to use Transformers the movie at all. So he just used all those characters. And he created a continuity which was actually better than the American continuity. And a lot of those characters are now in the Transformers comics now. And being used now. So it's interesting. Excuse me. And it's very similar here with Crisis. Because, like I say, in their quest to streamline the universe, what they actually gave rise to was many little offshoots that could make many different storylines. And lead to other crises.
Yeah, and it just made things richer as well. Like, you had Earth 2 with the JSA, the older Golden Age heroes, and that was completely separate. But now, when it combined, it made this whole thing of they were the first generation of heroes, and you could use them then to be the guys to not only advise the new generation, like the JSA, the JLA, but they then, in Johns' run, came in and trained up the newest generation with Atom Smasher and Magog and all these characters who are legacies, and it brought in a richness in history that didn't feel like it was there before.
Yeah. And obviously it kept all those characters alive because there's nothing wrong with a bit of Jay Garrick and a bit of Alan Scott. I really love Alan Scott, in fact. I've got a really mad love for the original Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And a lot of those Golden Age, because I've read a lot of those Golden Age, and yes, problems, cognitive dissonance, blah, blah, blah. It was the 30s and 40s, for fuck's sake. So obviously they're going to more likely punch people in the face and treat women like shit, because that's what happened back then, I'm afraid. But they're really good characters, and they're really well-told stories, and they were trailblazers, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
You know?
And
I like the fact that you read something and you think, oh, that's a bit cliche, and then you realise that is the cliche. That's where the cliche started.
Yeah. And they just became such great characters when they got integrated as well and became more relevant. And the loss of them is one of the things that when they announced the new 52, I was like, you know, keep the legacy characters, you know, keep all that. And then it was like, here's the new Earth 2 comic with young Jay Garrick and all. I was just like, I hated it. Just on principle, I've lost the Jay Garrick I love and things like that. So, yeah, I think sometimes you can streamline too much and lose that, whereas the iteration from Crisis on Infinite Earths to Final Crisis and New 52, you know, that's the perfect DC universe for me. I think they did it the best there, and the characters they decided to keep were great characters, and they utilised them really well, and even clearing up the continuity of, like, the Hawks. You know, it took them a little while, but they managed to do it in a way that made sense and didn't get too confusing.
Did they make Alan Scott gay in that?
Yes, well? In Earth 2, he was gay and also kind of Swamp Thing.
Right.
His power wasn't the Starheart, it was the green, you know, the same power that created Swamp Thing, and his ring was, he was about to propose to his partner, he died, so he used the ring as his thing he channeled his power into to honor his partner and remember him. So he wasn't a Green Lantern in any real sense of even the original Alan Scott Green Lantern with the magic. It was just he used the power of Earth. So it was a really, really big departure, and yeah, that threw me a lot because I love the GLs, and Alan Scott really isn't a part of that, but he's still brilliant, and they tie it in well, and yeah, it was just a weird choice to go that route, I thought.
I mean, take the risk, innit? But
yeah,
just it didn't seem to have paid. It doesn't seem to have been popular in any way.
No, I don't think the New Earth 2 stuff did particularly good.
No, that's a shame. But like I say, you got to take risks. Otherwise, you don't know. We don't know if it'll work or not. So, what do you think to the actual story then of Crisis on Infinite Earths? Are you a fan of it? Do you think it's a necessary evil that could have been done better, or do you think it's about as good as it could have been?
For me, my main criticism is it's too long in the sense of that there are lulls at certain points in the story where it almost feels like it's done. And it's like they beat the bad guy and everything seems okay, or like the Anti-Monitor's been pushed back for now, and then he resurfaces with a slight variation on his planet. It kind of feels like in some ways it was stretched out a bit to fill the 12 issues. They decided it's going to be 12 issues and then worked around that. So sometimes the pacing can feel a bit off for me, especially compared to newer events where they seem to have that down more, and that's my only real criticism. It's that in places it feels a bit slow.
Yeah, there's a lot of false finishes, as you say. More false finishes than a WrestleMania main event. They're beating him. Oh no, they haven't. Oh, they're going to, and you certainly the place where you feel that the most isn't the comic. It's actually the graphic audio,
right?
Because it finishes, and you think, oh, it's finished now. It hasn't finished, and then it finished. And if you didn't know, I mean, obviously I've listened to it, and I knew what was kind of coming, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, they're not going to, are they? And they totally do. They totally keep finishing it and then finishing it. The other thing I would say, as a criticism, mild criticism, that Harbinger is touted as a much more important character than she actually ends up being.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they had plans for her and then changed their minds a few issues in.
Yeah. Because she's a big part of it in the early issues. And Monitor basically says, oh, you're really important. And then it turns out her only importance is to murder the Monitor. And then it's kind of it.
Yeah. And then...
and it's a shame. That is a shame, because I think she could have been an interesting character.
Yeah. And she kind of seems to, fall off the map after this as well. The only other time I can really remember her in anything is the second story arc of Batman Superman. Yeah. When Supergirl comes back and she's there on Themyscira and then she dies.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I've not seen this character in anything since Crisis. She's back. Okay, oh, now she's dead. Right. Why was she there? It was because they just... It's like they forgot about her as soon as the book was done, or even halfway through the book. And it was a wasted potential, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those situations of she was pretty much created for it. Pretty much. I mean, she was around before, but because she was in the new Teen Titans and all that. But again, she was sort of a character that's kicking around. They said, "Oh, we'll use her," and then, well, we've used her now. What do we do now? And yeah. We've got nothing to do with her. Okay. And that's it then? Yeah, that's it. Oh, okay then.
I do get that, and it does happen, but look at Alexander Luthor and Superboy Prime. They were used after this in really good ways.
Absolutely. She's more like Pariah.
Yeah.
But then Pariah was created specifically for this, so I can understand that.
Yeah, it makes sense with him.
Yeah, it just seems that, because she's a really interesting character. I think she is, anyway. She could have been used a lot more than she was, and it's a shame that we don't really get to see her after this much, before she dies. But other than that, I mean, it's... To make it work at all was an amazing achievement by Marv Wolfman. But then you shouldn't be surprised. Marv Wolfman's really good at what he does. I think it was sometimes in comics you get a perfect storm. It's like Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. The stuff they did in Green Lantern and obviously Watchmen, it wouldn't have worked as well if one of those people hadn't been doing it. And I think the same is true with Perez and Wolfman. Had they not done it, had either one of them not been doing it, I don't think it would be half remembered as well as it is.
Yeah.
Because it's such a good comic book. It's such a good read. I completely agree with you. I think sometimes there are lulls. I think sometimes there are places where it needs to pick up the pace a bit. That, sadly, is the problem when you have a 12-issue miniseries. You've got to fill the time up somehow. And maybe it would have worked better as a 6, but that's not how comics work.
Yeah. So I don't know if they made the choice of it being 12 issues before they started and then had to work around that. Right, that kind of explains it then.
I've never seen anything officially confirming that. Absolutely, that's what happened.
Yeah, 'cause some events you get the sense that they tell their story, and say it ends up being 9 issues. Some of them it feels like, okay, this probably could have been longer, and it feels like they trimmed back their story to fit it. And other times it's like, okay, they added a little. There's a few bits of pacing, but it probably just ended up being around that length in their breakdown. But this one feels very much, they forced themselves to get to the 12 issues.
Yeah, it's the difference between that and something like Lord of the Rings, which, you can have it in 3 hours, but really it's a 4 to 5 hour film. Return of the King, I should say, really. But yeah, absolutely, I'm convinced 12 issues. That's what we want. We want 12 issues. Oh, okay then. I could probably do it in 6. 12 issues!
Yeah. It's things like Supergirl's funeral. It's like, it's an okay moment, and it acknowledges the character, but it interrupts the pacing. It didn't need to be there. It could have been done in an issue of Superman, or something like that. It feels like, how are we going to fill this out? Well, Supergirl's dead. Why don't we do a funeral instead of just moving on? It seems like that's something that was added because it fits with what was already there, but it wasn't part of the plan.
Wasn't part of the plan. Nice. One thing I will say I do like is that it doesn't fuck about with the end. It just chucks Kal-El, Lois Lane, Earth Prime Superboy, and Alexander Luthor. They get chucked into a pocket paradise dimension, and then obviously all the heroes then have to mop up, and then it just says, there you go. You do that in your separate books. Carry on.
Yeah.
I do really like that, because obviously after that you get things like the Superman, the John Byrne Superman reboot, which the Man of Steel, I think, it's informed everything that came after it. It was quite important, because before that you had obviously the original Superman comics, which Alan Moore finished off with the quite frankly brilliant Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. Which is great and weird and amazing and typical Alan Moore, really.
Yeah, and there's been used so many times to influence cartoons, live action, other comics, parodies. It's one of the quintessential Superman stories.
And one of the darkest stories, not just of Superman, but of anyone.
Yeah, it handles some pretty awful things inside it.
Loads of death, for instance. But it's Alan Moore, isn't it? So, I mean, you're never going to get something run-of-the-mill from Alan Moore. I mean, obviously, in later years, it'd be a bit more porny than maybe that is, but, What would happen if Wendy from Peter Pan got fucked? Weird books. I've only read part of them, and it's like, I don't really want to read any more Lost Girls, thanks. I'm starting to feel a bit dirty. And not in the good way. I'm feeling like I need a shower.
Oh, I had no idea that was in that, so I thank you for warning me off them.
Lost Girls. Lost Girls is all about the sexual sexual awakening of treasured literary characters. So I think is it Snow White? No, not Snow White. It's Wendy Darling. Oh Lord, it's been a long time since I've read it. Anyway, so yeah, Wendy Darling is definitely in there, and other. Cinderella's in one of them, I think. Anyway, watch out for it. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it because I feel like this might be a dangerous thing to say in a DC podcast, but I'm not that big a fan of Alan Moore.
I am. But I'm not someone who is just going to say blindly he's the best thing ever, because he's done some really dodgy stuff.
Yeah. It's like, don't get me wrong, I really like work he did within the DC universe, like Swamp Thing, GL, you know, he's done some great stuff. Watchmen, I think I got too much Watchmen being thrown at me around the time the movie came out, and that was close to when I first read the book and stuff. So I'm really Watchmen'd out, and it's like I appreciate what it did for the industry and how big an impact it had, but dear Christ, don't get me to read it, please. You know, it's like so. Yeah, I'm kind of similar. Certain books that get automatically held up as it was a defining moment in comics, so therefore it and its writer are instantly great. It just it's like
you should
Dark Knight Returns. It's like it's all right. I don't particularly like it, but I'm not going to turn around and say Frank Miller's one of the greatest comic writers ever because he wrote this book. It's like, yeah, the book did some, again, big important things, but it doesn't mean necessarily the book's brilliant.
Returns fine, Strikes Back's the really bad one. That's awful.
Yeah.
It's just bad and it's unreadable. But Returns is ace, because, I mean, I'm not going to go into it much. I think it's just because you'd never seen that level of brutality.
Yeah.
And Miller, for all his, obviously All-Star Batman's shite, it's just been said many times.
That book.
But nobody had shown truly what a horrible character Batman is until Frank Miller came along.
And it's stuff like that, which, it's a really important thing, and it changed Batman forever, really. And that's good. Because Batman people were like, okay, we can kind of do some of these stories now and look at him in this different light, and you know, it made a difference. But that book itself, I'm a bit, I'd take it or leave it.
Yeah.
If I had a list of 10 best Batman books, it wouldn't be on it, for me, personally.
No. I mean, I can understand why, you're maybe not a fan of it. It is, it can be difficult to read sometimes, but I just think the whole thing with the Joker, where the Joker breaks his own neck, it's like, he got it. He got that was the only logical way that shit is going to ever end. And, it's the same with the Killing Joke. It's that thing where, Batman offers help to the Joker and the Joker just says, nah, it's too late. I love that bit. It's just, it's too late for me. And it's just like one of those things that you never thought you'd see.
Mm.
You don't often see now, because obviously the Joker's been fetishised to a point where it's pretty much unrecognisable now, but people seem to enjoy the shit that he does, and it's like, okay, you have to remember that this guy isn't someone we want to emulate, right? But there you go. No, I'd like to say I completely understand why you're a bit trepidatious about things like that. Excuse me, but I don't think Crisis is one of those. I think we're both fans of Crisis.
I think because it has so much going on in it, it can't. How best to describe it? It can't focus too much on one character like those books did. That, no. It's not let's reinvent this character or redefine this character or anything like that. It's we're making a whole universe and dealing with all these old ones. So you don't have time to do any of that kind of stuff. Even though it has some great character moments in it, it moves too fast and there's so much going on. And because of those like false endings, there's like so much story in there that you just got to keep going with it, and it's kind of a roller coaster that doesn't stop until all of a sudden, like you said, boom, there's the end.
Yeah, it's literally an epic. It's in the good old fashioned tradition of epic movie making. like Cecil B. DeMille, that kind of thing. It's like, if you've ever seen a film like the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, something like that, it can't focus on one character for too long. It's not about that. It's about the world. And they get that. It's the same thing with things like Infinite Crisis and one of my personal favourites, Final Crisis, which I fucking love. Final. It's so bleak.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about it another time because it deserves to be talked about. But Grant Morrison, obviously, when he did that sequel, that's like 10 years ago. But yeah, it's Christ. There's no joy to be had in that. It's like you can. It's like, Grant, do you want a job at Black Library, mate? Fuck me.
It's like
it's all levels of grimdark.
But those books, it's like, you've got, like in Crisis on Infinite Crisis, you've got a lot of stories surrounding Alex Luthor and Superboy Prime, and they focus on like Nightwing gets a fair bit of a focus in there and stuff like that. And then Final Crisis, you got Barry Allen coming back, so there's some focus on him, and I can't remember his name now. That young Monitor guy.
Oh yeah.
And so there are characters who get a lot of focus, and relative to other characters, a lot of the story and characterization. Yeah. But even then, it's not about these characters. It's not about them. It's about the story of the universe. So. Yeah, it's too big even for these spotlight characters to be able to claim the book.
Yeah, well, even when you meet, obviously in Final Crisis, so you got like big characters like Black Adam turning up and Mary Marvel and Wonder Woman getting turned into a Fury for Christ's sakes, and yeah, it helps with me that I'm a massive fan of that New Gods sort of stuff anyway, and the Kirby-esque stuff, and the fact that that's the Apocalypse characters only work if you make it as bleak as you possibly can. It doesn't work otherwise. If you try and make them into sort of comedy characters, and sometimes that does happen in the Justice League cartoons, they could never make it as bleak as it's supposed to be. But in that they really do, and they fetishize Mary Marvel to the point where it isn't her anymore, obviously. And then you find out who it actually is. And then you have Tiki Tawny, who fucking wastes Calibac like you wouldn't believe, and it's like, Jesus! This guy's one of the Marvel family, for fuck's sake. But the fact that there were sequels to it, and the fact that in the DC universe, Crisis just means, yes, massive company-wide crossover event, huge. Things are never going to be the same again. I love the fact, and even in the DCEU and the Flash universe, the Flash and the Arrowverse is heading for a crisis. They've said that for a while now.
Yeah, first episode of Flash, they had the headline with the word crisis and Red Sky, and it's like, well, that word and Red Sky have two big ingredients. We know it's coming.
Yeah,
the 10th season of the Flash, they're going to just go mad and be like, yeah, we're doing Crisis and Infinite Earths.
Oh, absolutely, they have to do it, because nobody's depicted it properly, and they've got the characters now, or they're getting the characters, because there's so many DC characters in the TV universe now, which is fantastic to see. And best thing about it is they always get quite good actors to do it.
And
like Victor Garber as one half of Firestorm, and
brilliant,
my man Wentworth. I fucking love Wentworth Miller.
Oh, he shouldn't work as that character. He's so cheesy and over the top, and is chewing the scenery. But he's brilliant. I fucking love Captain Cold.
He's the coolest motherfucker. Pun intended. He's the coolest motherfucker in that show. He's so ace. But then again, so's what's his chops? His guy who plays his brother in
Dominic Purcell.
That's it.
Yeah.
Dominic Purcell.
I never thought I'd end up loving Heatwave.
He's great.
He's one of the best characters in the TV universe.
I like the fact he hangs out with White Canary all the time as well.
Yeah. The one character outside of Captain Cold he respects and will listen to.
White Canary. She's ace as well. She's one of my favourite characters in that whole thing. Because she's like, so I'm a lesbian, so fucking what? It's like, yeah, there you go. That's how you deal with that. You don't make a thing of it. She's just, that's what I do. I'm into girls, so.
And
whatever.
guys,
Well,
she
yeah,
banged
but,
Constantine.
to be fair, everybody would bang Constantine.
He is a very sexy man.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I say, all this possible because of Crisis on Infinite Earth. It totally, completely changed the DC universe. Sales went up. There was more interest than ever before. We got things like Year One. We got things like Dark Knight Returns. We got Watchmen because of it, because they established that you could do these sort of encased stories. I know you said the word graphic novel earlier on to describe Crisis. It kind of is. But then Watchmen obviously expanded on that.
Yeah.
And then that was the first proper graphic novel of modern times. And because of that, it became a proper art form again. And people started taking DC more seriously, whereas before they kind of hadn't. And Marvel was sort of winning everything. And then DC sort of turned it around and became, for a while, more popular. And then obviously X-Men started again in 92 and that sort of...
Yeah, the 90s X-Men, definitely, yeah.
Oh, everybody's into that. I'm not ashamed to say I was a big fan of that sort of first Magneto run. That was ace. And again, if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have had things like the X-Men movies. And, with a much more serious depiction of Magneto, a much more sympathetic depiction of Magneto as well. Because beforehand he'd just been wahaha, Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which I hate it so much.
Yeah, they've definitely made the right move by dropping the evil part of that title.
Yeah, drop that, and the most important thing, especially the X-Men film, they set their stall out really, really quickly by sort of showing you Eric in the old concentration camp and said, yeah, there's a reason,
Yeah, well, it's been a little while since I've seen it. Isn't that the very first scene of the very first X-Men?
Very first thing.
Yeah, the first thing you see is
his parents getting led to the chamber, the gas chamber. And it's like, yeah, if you want to know why he's like he is, there's your reason.
Mm-hmm. And it's like I think we made the comparison in the first episode. Him and Sinestro, it's the same thing. They went from these cheesy, fairly one-dimensional, I'm evil, ha into, okay, I'm kind of sometimes on these guys' sides. I can see where they're coming from, and whilst I don't probably approve of their methods, I understand why they're doing it, and their end goal is a good goal. It's a very hard pair of characters to dismiss as completely evil. They're human. That's the thing.
They're flawed. They've got flaws. They're not completely bad, but they're not completely good. And like you say, it's the methodology that is wrong. The methodology is why they are messing up, basically.
And I'd throw Black Adam on that list as well. I think he's
Black Adam, especially. I mean, especially things like. Trying to think which one it is now. It's all the 52 in 52 where he gets Osiris. And he gets obviously ISIS and all that, and again, it turns it around, and it's all taken away from him, because of Dr. Savannah and all them lot.
He gets forced into World War III because he was trying to be good, and they broke him.
Yeah, Mr. Mind at the end, didn't it? Turns out to be him. Spoilers. Sorry. But if you're listening to this, you probably already know.
Yeah, and if you don't, go read these books because they're awesome, and B, you need to know these things.
yeah, absolutely you do. Why would you even listen to it? It's like the Doctor Who podcast, obviously the Beacon. It's like when Doctor Who gets started, we'll be spoilering the fuck out of that series. Come on now. There's no way we're not going to be talking about it. Just quickly, before we do start wrapping things up, have you seen the trailer?
Yes, saw it earlier.
It's just a normal Doctor Who trailer, isn't it?
Yeah, there was nothing mind-blowing about this. It's, the Doctor's there, her companions are like, yeah, she's alright, she's in charge, do what she says, quick, let's run, big explosions. It's like, it's just the standard Doctor fare.
Do you know what? The best thing about it is I saw on Twitter saying, oh yeah, girl power, because they're all saying she's in charge. Now, they're saying she's in charge because she's probably the only person who knows what the fuck's going on. They're not saying it because she's a woman. Go on now.
Every group of people's like that with the Doctor. The Doctor walks into any room, and people follow them.
They're the smartest person in the room generally,
Yeah.
and that's the person you tend to put in charge.
Yeah, the guy
Well,
saying
there was
who put
nothing-
her in charge is just an idiot who hasn't figured out she's the smartest one there yet.
Exactly. I've been bombarded with people for, a year and a half now nearly, saying, oh, change is good, and then change is bad. And you watch the trailer and think, it's going to be the same. It's always been.
Yeah.
It's just Doctor Who. It's just, for some reason, they don't have a dingle-dangle there no more. They've got a foof. And that's not going to factor in the series.
At the minute,
There's
the biggest
nobody-
change looks like a permanent 4-person TARDIS crew.
Well,
It's
I'm
like-
not convinced of that.
Maybe, it seems more that way than, like, the closest we had was Matt Smith's run, when River would pop in for a few episodes.
Well, before that, the last time it would have been Fifth Doctor.
Yeah.
With Nissa Tegan and Adric, but they got rid of Adric pretty quickly, and I kind of have a feeling that's going to happen again. I don't think he'll die, because I think those days are gone where companions die, but I do think somebody will leave.
I hope they bring those days back. There's no...
What's that?
The companions dying thing.
Oh, I'm sick to death of
They've
it.
dodged it so much with fake outs, and they died, but they lived their whole life back in the past quite happy, and obviously it was just like, just kill someone.
I know. Well, the only one I like was Bill, because obviously she effectively died by becoming a Sideman, but they kind of they made it kind of nice at the end that she got to be with Heather. Where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's kind of cool. That's
But
kind of nice. I like that.
Let's be honest, that season finale, fucking everyone died. It was grim. I loved it.
Apart from Nadal, he didn't die.
That's true,
everybody
because
else
he's too
died.
much of a badass to die.
He was nice. But everybody else died. Yeah, cool, excellent. But I think those days are pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot lighter from here on in. Maybe that's what it needs. I don't know. But like I say, I don't think anything's going to change particularly. Not really. It's just
The Doctor becoming
Who.
female isn't the Crisis in Infinite Earths for Doctor Who.
No, it means as an actress. I keep saying it. It's the accent that bothers me. It's not the gender. Look, I'm the Doctor. Go to the top of the stairs. Oh no! And yet I realise I've got that accent. That's why I don't want to hear it on telly. I've then listened to it every day. But never mind. Anyway, excellent stuff. Well, that's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Obviously, go read, go listen. It's on Graphic Audio. I think it's still on the Graphic Audio website as well. And like I say, pick it up. It's available everywhere.
Yeah.
So, you're never not going to find a copy of it because it's literally on everything. They need to do it in a film. They need to sort of get their shit together. It'd be nice to see it on TV, but they need a film.
I wouldn't be surprised if they use some form of Crisis to possibly sort out what's happening with the universe with possible recastings and stuff like that. They might just
they've
do
said
some sort
Flashpoint.
of Crisis.
They've said the Flash movie is going to be Flashpoint. That's definitely going ahead.
Okay.
They're filming next year. Then they've said it's definitely happening. It's like the Joker film. It's definitely happening. So it's not like they're just abandoning it, because I don't think they can at this point. I
No,
think they have
they've
to
invested too
go.
much money. They're going to want it in some shape or form.
And Wonder Woman, even if nothing else, they'll keep the Wonder Woman films going. But I think, the smart thing to do would be Flashpoint it. If Cavill's going, get somebody else.
Yep.
If Affleck's going, fine, get Gyllenhaal in, because I reckon he'd make a really good Batman with Jake Gyllenhaal. Or someone like Bradley Cooper. Somebody actually said they should give Nicolas Cage his chance to be Superman, play like an older sort of Kal-El Superman.
Even if it was just
I'd be
in
down
the
with that.
Flashpoint movie, I'll do it. I would love it.
I'd be down with that. The other one they said is Michael B. Jordan, and it's like, I don't think I can accept Killmonger as Superman. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's
It's
not because he's black. It's because he's
No.
Killmonger.
He's fucking Killmonger. I don't want him as Superman. Plus, he's had his fucking chance. He was bloody Human Torch. Then he's Killmonger. He can't then be Superman. He's also Creed. Come on now.
Well, you say that, but how many comic book characters has Ryan Reynolds played now?
All of them. But he can get away with that because he's Deadpool. He can quite happily take the piss out of that in all his films. It's just, I don't see Michael B. Jordan as Superman anyway. I don't see him. I just, they had the chance with that with Will Smith. He should have been Superman. He'd have made a good Superman.
Yeah.
He was Hancock in the end.
Because everyone loves Will Smith as well. That's the thing. You need you need an actor who everyone's going to go, yeah, and get that nice warm feeling about of, yeah, I like that person.
Denzel, he'd have made a great Superman. I mean, he's old now, so he's playing the Equalizer and just killing people. It's just fucking great. Oh, I love that. I want to see the second one so much because it's like it just straight up says to everybody, "I'm going to kill each and every one of you." It's like, yeah, I believe that. Fucking nice. Anyway, Amy.
Yes.
Wherefore can people find you on the old interwebs?
Well, I've got a few places. I'm on Twitter. At amazing_Amy_W. Same handle for Instagram as well. And I'm on Facebook, so hit me up there. And yeah, you'll find me on most of those, posting random things, mainly geek related stuff or pictures of my rabbits. So
I'm gonna say lots of bunnies.
Yeah. Well, they're too cute. I just look at them, and before I know it, my phone's on the camera mode, so it's like, okay.
I can't cope with bunnies. I can't cope with them. It's all over the shop, aren't they? It's like you can't get your eye off them for a second because they're just up to something.
No, mine are pretty well behaved. They mostly just like cuddle on their big bed in the kitchen. They've never chewed wires or anything like that. So
that's what my mates always did shit like that. They were chewing everything. It's like, I can't cope with you. I'll have a cat.
I think we've just really lucked out with our ones.
Yeah. Plus, it's all the Rohypnol. It just sort of whacks them out. Yeah. Cool. Excellent stuff. Anywhere else or anything else you'd like to promote?
I might as well promote my other podcast I do, which is a history podcast called Eccentric Earth. I get different guests on every week, and I pick a topic from history to talk about, which they don't know anything about. They don't even know what the topic's going to be, let alone what the topic contains. So it's a bit fun to see people's reactions, and I try and go for weird and unusual things. So if you're into that kind of stuff, go check that out, because Glenn, you've been on that a few times already, and got to arrange to get you back on as well, because it's always good fun having you on that.
No, you're too kind. I do need to listen to the John McCain ones because he led a very interesting life.
Yeah,
I'm very interested to see what you made of it.
Yeah, I still don't know what I think about him. It's up and down. He's all right. He's a bit of an arsehole. I don't know.
He was old. No, honestly, he came from a different era. You can't judge him by 2018 standards because he's from a completely different era that even you and I'm a bit older than you. But I don't understand the era he came from. He came from a Eisenhower Republican. That's what I always think of when I think of John McCain. He's an Eisenhower Republican. It's all to do with honour and American values and moral standards and this kind of. I don't think he was an awful person.
You add into that the very military upbringing and his dad and granddad are the only people who've ever been a father-son 4-star admirals in the Navy. Very different upbringing to even a lot of Republicans at that time.
Exactly. But then, on the other hand, people say, oh, well, he had awful social conscience and he didn't understand this. Well, why would he understand things like homosexuality and trans issues? He's not going to understand that. But on the other hand, he's a man who, when given the chance to walk away from daily torture, he said, not unless everybody else goes with me. And they said, no. He said, right, fine, I'll carry on then. So you can't, that's a badass at the end of the day. Plus, one of his best friends was Uncle Joe Biden. So he can't have been all bad, because I can't imagine Joe Biden being friends with people who are bad.
No, he's not. It's just some of the decisions he made, it's like...
Yeah, they're dodgy, questionable, because I think that I would put that down to him being a human being.
Yeah, no one's perfect. Hell, I very rarely pick people in my podcast to go through who are perfect. Even the people who are badass, amazing, inspirational people have something a bit dodgy in their past.
We're going to have to do Trump. We're going to have to do him.
Yeah, I'm holding off.
Until he dies.
Not necessarily until he dies, but to see what happens with his presidency.
Until he gets indicted.
Yeah. Or, something like that, because at the minute...
Thatcher! I'm requesting it now. Thatcher. I want to do Thatcher. So interesting. Such an interesting person. Awful person. Really reprehensible, but on the other hand, fascinating person. But then monsters usually are. Excellent stuff. As for me, go listen to Eccentric Earth. It's easy to find, and you should listen to it. It's very interesting. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Cymru Nerd Cave. You can also find me Glenn Jakeman on Facebook, and obviously, you're on Back to the 80s page anyway. Go listen to Back to the 80s. The latest episode has just been about Airplane with Duncan, and we all love Duncan because he's ace. Just a quick announcement on Back to the 80s. I know it isn't Back to the 80s here, but it's on the page. Why not? For 1 month in October, we are going forward a decade. So we're going back to the 90s, not the 80s. So we're going to be talking, Amy here is going to be talking about something. We're going to get Pete Gaskell from the Smorgasbord, who will also be talking about something. We're going to get Andy Welch from the Smorgaspod. He's going to be talking about 90s Transformers, unsurprisingly. And then we're going to get Duncan on as well to talk about stuff for 4 weeks then. Because it's my birthday month, I wanted to do something a bit different.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting stuff as well.
Yeah, it's going to be cool stuff.
Yeah.
From the 90s. I'll let you know. Jamie here is going to be talking about 40k, because we love a bit of 40k. Pete's going to be talking about 90s football. We're going to be copying Josh Widdicombe and the Quickly Kevin podcast for an episode. Obviously, like I say, Andy's going to be talking about 90s Transformers, and Duncan will be talking about failed Batman copying movie franchises. Things like The Phantom, The Rocketeer, The Shadow. I love The Shadow. I love it so much. It's one of my favourite films. And I just love anything that Alec Baldwin's in. He's ace. He's got anger issues, sure, but but he is good in things that he's in, especially 30 Rock. He's ace in 30 Rock. But anyway, that's it. We shall finish there. Amy, as always, my colleague, been a pleasure.
Yeah, the same. It's always fun to get together and talk comics.
Absolutely. Like I say, keep an ear open. We'll be back very, very soon with other stuff as well. We'll be back with episode 3. Just a quick spoiler alert on that one. We're going to be talking about Batman Forever.
Hopefully not forever.
Oh, I hope so. I could do that. Amy, say bye-bye to all the lovely people.
Bye-bye, lovely people.
Bye-bye, everybody. We'll be back again very, very soon. See ya.
Bye.